So it looks like GB News are following the same trend as every other mainstream YouTube channel, TV channel, news outlet in the UK. And it looks like they're starting to turn on the Reform Party. Now, I've seen some worrying signs for quite a while, but the YouTube video that they put out yesterday and the headline to it, for me, is showing the true colours of GB News. And this is bearing in mind that Nigel Farage is the biggest reporter by a million miles on GB News. But take a look at the headline to this YouTube video that GB News put out yesterday. Now, it claims that Keir Starmer tore Nigel Farage apart, basically. And for anybody who's watched the clip that I'll show in a minute, it was an exchange on Prime Minister's questions. Farage asked a question, Starmer come back with quite a funny response, a rarity for him, and both men laughed. Nigel Farage found it hilarious. Don't forget, Nigel Farage has been faced with more hostility in the European Parliament than Keir Starmer and the UK Parliament could ever give him in a million years. He understands politics, he understands you give a bit, you take a bit. And especially in the settings of Prime Minister's questions, when you can't get the last word in and the Prime Minister's already aware of your question, he's going to be able to come back with quite a catchy comeback. And of course, Farage, who enjoys politically attacking people, would probably respect having it thrown back at him. But it's very far from being torn apart. But take a look at this clip and let me know what you think.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure the Prime Minister and the whole House would wish to congratulate Donald Trump on his landslide victory last week.
Hold on. I will hear the question. Nigel.
Thank you. But within a couple of days, we'd learned of a third assassination attempt. Charges have been laid, and behind it are Iran's Revolutionary Guards. Has the time not come, Prime Minister, to prescribe what is so obviously a terrorist organisation, and in doing so, not just do the right thing, but maybe mend some fences between this government and the incoming presidency of Donald Trump's, given that the whole of his cabinet have been so rude about him over the last few years?
Well, I'm glad to see the honourable member making a rare appearance back here in Britain. He spent so much time in America recently. I was half expecting to see him on the immigration statistics when we see the next batch. But he may have missed. I did congratulate the incoming president last week, and we will work with him. The point he makes about Iran is a very serious point, and we will work across the House and with our allies on it. Obviously, on question of prescription, we keep them under review. Thank you.
So there we see Nigel Farage take some digs about the Labour cabinet and the comments on Trump, and we see Starmer come back with a catchy line about him making a rare appearance, which I'll talk about in a minute, and the fact that he thought he may be on the immigration list for America because he's been over there so much watching Donald Trump, and both men find it hilarious. Now, I'd like to pick up on a couple of points because a lot of critics of Nigel Farage talking about the lack of him in Parliament. But it's not that Farage isn't turning up to Parliament like he should. The problem with Prime Minister's questions is, if you're a party the size of Reforms with only 5 MPs, you are not automatically selected every single week to ask a question. So you'll put your request in and the Speaker will grant it or not. Usually they won't grant it because there are 650 MPs in the House of Parliament. Now, if you're the size of the Lib Dems, you'll get automatic questions, and if you're the official opposition, you'll get several questions. And unfortunately, that's just the way the system works. The majority of the questions are filled up with the actual controlling party just asking questions like, does the Prime Minister support me in saying what a great job that we're doing? And that takes up a lot of the questions. The same thing happens in council meetings. So the fact of Nigel Farage not speaking a lot in Parliament is because Nigel Farage can't speak a lot in Parliament. When he was in the European Parliament, he ended up with, I think it was the biggest opposition group, so he got a lot more time to speak. And there was actually, surprisingly, more democracy in the European Parliament than you'll actually see in the UK Parliament, unfortunately. But let's go back to GB News and what seems to be GB News seeming to turn on the Reform Party. Now, first of all, let me say that the GB News, for me, was a breath of fresh air, along with Talk TV. I think Talk TV are actually far better now than GB News as a whole. Both organisations have a couple of people in there who are still very mainstream and very BBC Sky News-like. But as a whole, both organisations have been a breath of fresh air. With the Talk TV, you've still got people like Jeremy Kyle on there, Mike Graham, who are fantastic. They will say whatever they think, no matter what happens to the channel or their job. And there's many others on Talk TV. But what we're seeing on GB News is it's becoming very, very BBC-like, in my opinion. And Lee Anderson called this out while doing an interview and said, look, you basically need to be very careful. And I think what he meant by that is, look, you're never going to be accepted by the mainstream media. You get your views by following Reform UK, and Reform UK are your breadwinner, basically. But the headline yesterday about Nigel Farage being torn apart by Keir Starmer really showed GB News' I think, direction that they're going to go in, because there was no tearing apart. Nigel Farage, like I said, is the biggest reporter on GB News. So what are GB News playing at? What are they hoping to achieve by putting false headlines like this out? And we've also seen many interviewers now on GB News which have started asking those very loaded questions when interviewing Nigel Farage. And I think a lot of it is down to jealousy, because Farage is far bigger than all of them could ever hope to be in a million years. Nigel Farage in the UK is box office, whether people like him or not, people tune in to watch him. His rallies are now getting more American style each and every time he does one, and he's only going to get bigger and bigger. Please let me know what you think about GB News. Why do you think they made the decision to put a lie out? Anybody reading that would think that Farage had been... I read it and I thought, oh, this doesn't look good, and I watched the clip, and then I was left wondering, well, they can obviously see that Nigel Farage hasn't been ripped apart, so why put it out? Why are they like trying to suck up to the mainstream media, the powers to be, the Prime Minister? They're hoping that Keir Starmer will start doing interviews for him, because I warn GB News now, and obviously they don't care what little old me thinks, but what I will say for GB News is they hold the big audience on this alternative news, and you see a lot of people now setting small channels like I am up, and people seem to enjoy watching them because it's a way of us having a different opinion and a different discussion. And what GB News have been, they've been like the independent but at the same time well-funded big news organisation that has done a great job. But what's going to happen to GB News? It will never be accepted by the mainstream. It will never be accepted by the left and the liberals. They will never watch your channel, and you will end up upsetting anybody from centre to right, or libertarians, people who are conservative minded, not necessarily conservatives. I'm sure not a conservative, but I do agree with more of the small seat conservative values than I do the left values. You will lose people watching you. So I can't understand, and I'm hoping that some people in the comment section may be able to enlighten me on why GB News chose this headline. I wouldn't mind if it was true, because then they're reporting on all news, but it's clearly not true. And my prediction is you will now see GB News start going more and more down this mainstream rabbit hole. And the reason probably is that somewhere behind the scenes, some funder or some sponsor has said, hang on a little bit, you're giving too many jobs to Reform UK politicians, and you're giving them too much airtime, and they're feeling scared now because I know they did get a huge fine over something to do with the election, and maybe now they're quivering and they're showing that they can attack Nigel Farage, and they're going to come more mainstream. But thank you all for watching, and can I please ask you to like, share, and definitely subscribe, which gives me more chance to get these videos out to more and more people, and hopefully beat that all too dreaded YouTube algorithm. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.